Everybody, it's Janet with Janet's Craft Corner, and I'm sitting here painting the Marshmallow Snowman ornaments and thought I would share with you just how to do it. First piece we need to do is to paint the base coat of each of our snowmen. I'm doing the pair, although you can buy them separately. You don't need to paint all the way to the top and bottom borders because we are going to be attaching pieces up there. So make your life a little easier and don't have any chance of the white paint going over by not going all the way up there. And you don't really have to worry about the engraved marks because those are only to help you position things after you get them painted and you're ready to glue them. So it doesn't matter just how much they fill in as long as you can still see them a little bit. The exception to that is these two marks that go between the marshmallows on the larger one. And just use an X-Acto knife or a toothpick to go back through them right after you paint each coat. So there's one coat on that. And while that's drying a little bit, we're going to also put a coat on the snowflakes. Now, when you do a kit from us, you want to separate your pieces by color. And I've already done that, but I use painter's tape turned upside down and taped to a piece of cardboard to help hold all my little pieces together. Now, what I'm talking about when I talk about a sponge method of painting is you take a sponge and you dip it in the paint and you take a lot of the paint off. So it's just a very light layer of paint on it. And you pat it very lightly on the individual pieces that you're trying to paint. This method will keep your engraved marks coming through. It's also great for painting the really small items like these snowflakes. It makes it a whole lot easier than trying to paint them with a brush. So use that method for each of those two kinds of situations. Now, acrylic paint dries pretty quickly, but that's not quite dry. So we're going to do our orange real quick while we're waiting. I guess I should show you what I'm doing off the screen up here. My palette is sitting up here and I'm just squirting paint into it and using that as my way to get my paint that I need. You could use a paper plate for a palette. I get these at Dollar Tree. They're just, they call them food service containers, I think, but you get for $1.25, you get like 50 of them. So, they're not very expensive and you can use them for quite a while. So our orange, we're again using the same method. The makeup sponge method. These are just regular makeup sponges. And I'm going to show you, they're cut up into pieces because, if you do the whole makeup sponge, you're going to go through a lot of them. But I cut mine into quarters, and then usually you can kind of cut once the paint dries, you can kind of cut it off one time on each one of these quarters and get basically 16 different colors or 16 different applications out of each of these. Okay, our red is the same. Actually, we're dry over here, so we're going to take and do our second coat of white. White is one of those that almost always needs a second coat. It's one of those frustrating ones. Most acrylic paints don't need two coats, and you'll find that as you paint your items that we send you, they don't really need two coats unless white, a couple of pastels. Sometimes the red, I don't understand why, but I guess the red has enough of I don't know. It's weird that red almost always needs it, but it does almost always need it. So I'm just kind of putting that out there. It doesn't usually with the sponge method, but with the brush method, it almost always needs it. The white needs it with either the sponge or the brush. These, you can see if you probably can't see it, but I can see that these pieces of these snowflake pieces just aren't covered all the way. And there's that, and then that makes me done with that brush. So I'll stick it in some water up there, and then we'll do the snowflakes again. Like I said, you want to take as much of the paint out of your sponge as possible so you don't get a lot over the edges on these. and then just very lightly tap. And they're pretty easy to paint that way. If you try, like I said, if you try to use a brush, I don't have the patience or the dexterity anymore to use a brush on those. So, and then finally, in using the sponge method, the last one we're going to do is the red, and we're going to add a little red over here to our tray. And you don't need very much when you're doing these, very light amounts. You know, like I said, you're trying to keep it light on the sponge anyway, so just a little dollop of the color is plenty. And again, I'm using a sponge in the sponge method. The heart is one I could probably paint with a brush, but because the little sign here says warm and cozy on it, I want to use the sponge method on it to get the warm and cozy to stay showing. And so I'm not willing to dirty up a brush for just the heart. And you want to make sure you unload those pretty good. There we go. You can see, hopefully you can see that you can still see the words, the warm and cozy words. And I forgot to go through and clean my edges. I forgot to go ahead and use the X-Acto knife on those two edge pieces. So I'm going to do that real quick before that dries too much. It works a little better actually when it's a little tacky, but if you let it dry completely, it doesn't really work at all. And I am a little concerned along this edge that I didn't get enough, so I'm going to use the sponge method just to tap off this edge here of this one, because that arm will go on there, but I think there's some edging there that I didn't get well enough. A couple of spots there too. Now with the other two colors, the brown and the black, I'm actually going to use a wet wipes method to paint those. So I'm going to get me a wet wipe. Just a wet ones is what I use, but you can use a wet ones or a baby wipe, anything. You don't want a lot of soapy stuff in it. So, you know, don't get ones that are loaded up with stuff, I guess. But I'm just going to use one end of this for the brown, and I have a light brown. It's a cocoa. It's a Craft Smart cocoa, it looks like. And I'm just going to get it, and I dabbed it on my wet wipe, and it's decently thick on there. I don't know, just kind of rub, and you're going to rub across them all. And then for these, we want them to look a little more rustic. So then I'm going to move over here on the edge of to another spot on the wet wipe, and I'm going to rub just to clean off part of them. Okay, and then I'm going to use that same method to do the black, because I want it again to look a little kind of washed out, I guess. The buttons I could use a regular method on, but it's not worth it for just the buttons, so I'm going to do them in this too. If you get a little less paint than I got this time, it might work a little easier, but rub it on and then basically go through and wash it kind of off. And you can see that it's making it look a little distressed, which is what we want it to look like. And if you feel like you get too much off, then go back and kind of tab with your part that has some on it and go back and forth until you feel like you like what you've got. And there, really quickly, we've got everything for this painted. I'm going to look at it all, make sure that I don't want to paint something a little more. And I think I want to put another coat of that orange on there. It looks like it's still, you can still see the wood kind of through it. And you're better off to do several light coats than one large coat, because your engraving will show through better if you do that. And like I said, they dry really, really quick, so we're going to be able to assemble here right now. We don't have to wait. So put that over there, and we're going to pull our little guys over here, and we're going to start our assembly. I used glitter art glue. You can get it on Amazon. And you can order it with a package that has these little bitty bottles, and they work great for these projects. So we're going to put that piece up there, right where it belongs. Get it as straight as we can on our edges, so we don't have any edges sticking out between the two pieces. I want to keep as much of that from happening as we can. We can go back with a black marker or a black paintbrush and touch it up if we get edges showing, but it's better off to just be careful as you're applying and try to keep your edges from showing. Those pieces are on there. Those are basically our gingerbread, because these are s'mores marshmallows. So then we're going to put our black pieces on. These come unstuck from the paper or the tape. And these are basically our chocolate. And let's get our arms on. This glue sets up pretty quick, so but it gives you enough of a leeway to kind of slide them around to get them lined up really well. And again, we want to try to line up so we have as little of a gap between our two pieces, and you can't see the other piece below it. Basically, is what we're trying to accomplish. Lined up as closely as possible. And then our little black buttons. And then we're going to do our noses. On here. And you can, through the white, you can see the little bit of the etching, so you know where they need to go. And then this one goes over here. And finally, we'll put our red heart on. And then our snowflakes, you get 2 on each one, basically on opposite corners. As we put this last snowflake on, you can see we still got quite a few details that aren't showing up. And that's because you have to hand paint those. But I'll tell you, the easiest way to do that, and we're going to hold this guy off. Yeah, pull him up here before we go. The easiest way to do that is actually a paint pen. And I use Thule art pens. There you go, the Thule acrylic paint pens. I use these sorted colors. They've also got black and white, just ones that are just black and white, which I use too, because I go through more black and white than anything. You prime them a little bit, make sure they got paint coming out, and then just fill in or draw lines, one or the other. And we're going to draw our line there. And if you're drawing this line, you'll notice it kind of goes, the paint kind of seeps down the line as you go. So it is not hard to do. Really should probably have done this before we put our carrot on it. It would have made it easier. That's okay. And then on our eyes, we're just gonna kind of dot it around until we fill that hole in, that circle in. And that gets that one done. On this one, our mouth is actually a bunch of coal pieces, just like, so it's just like our eyes. So we kind of make our circle and fill it in with a couple little dots. Oh, it didn't come out very clean, but remember these are coal pieces, so it's okay if they don't come out perfect circles. You could also use just a regular paintbrush to do these with black paint, but like I said, my dexterity doesn't do a very good job with that. So, and you can tell I'm not getting these very much as actual little circles, but that's okay. Now we need to still put our tag on. So to do that, we're going to first put a bow on him. And I've got a 12-inch piece of ribbon here. I think it's 1/4-inch ribbon. And I'm just going to tie a regular bow here. Just hold my finger there while I make a bow, and I kind of switch fingers as I go. But this ribbon is double-sided. It's the same print on both sides, so I don't have to worry about twisting as I go. If it's single-sided ribbon, then you need to twist right before you pull through here. Tighten that up a little bit so our knot is kind of tight. You don't want it too big, so just adjust until you feel like you've got about the right size. And then pretty close. If you hold on to your knot, it doesn't loosen as much as you adjust. And then we'll just dovetail our ends. I'm going to try to make them about the same length, although it's not a big deal if they're not. I mean, this is handmade stuff, so. Okay, then we're going to get ourselves about, I don't know, 6 inches of baker's twine. I don't know if I got 6 inches or not, that's okay. And we're going to slide it underneath here. And try to bring it around and tie a knot in it. Then we're going to push it through here. So if you kind of suck on the ends a little bit, it'll hold that pretty good while you're doing that, so you can get that pulled through there. And that, and usually I can get 2 through here, although this baker's twine's a little thicker. This is a little paper clip I have that's cut off that I'm using to help me thread things sometimes, and so I'm just going to take it and put it through here, put both pieces through and pull it through, and it'll be a little tight coming through with those 2 ribbons, but I think I can get it to pull, maybe. This one's really tight. You may just have to go with 1 through. We're going to have to go with just 1 through because it just will not go. Okay, so we'll go back here and we'll just put 1 of them through. And then pull them up together and tie a knot. And then we're going to tie a bow with our point. So we're going to take our point and make it into a little bow now. I kind of wish I'd made that a little longer, but life will go on, it'll work. There we go, that'll work. So, and we're going to kind of twist so that our bow is not up in our face. And there we go, he's all ready. So now they both just need a hanger on them. And that's, again, where our little holder thing here comes in. So we're actually going to make a totally fake bow. It is not even going to be real at all. We're going to show you how to do this. Okay, so we're going to start by putting this halfway through on our little paper clip that we've got, and we'll run it through our hole on our, first of all, we're going to run it through the hole on our bead. I about forgot the order you need to do. Run it through our bead. And then run it through our hole. And then I have a puppy who wants attention. Can you hear him? We're going to thread that bead back through the loop here so that we create a tie and basically a hold point down here. And then we're going to slip our paper clip off and pull our point here tight. Now then, we're going to leave some space here. We're going to spread this open a little bit. And then we're going to take our ribbon that we're using for our bow, and we're going to do our cancer awareness symbol thing and make our little bow. And I think my ribbon's about 8 inches long. And we're going to push it through one of the tails, and one of the bows are going to go, one of the loops are going to go through to that side. And then we're going to push our ball just down on here tight. So it's basically holding it in place. We're going to tie a slip knot and slide it down into our ball so that it'll hold our ball in place. Now the ball, this ball that I happen to be using has a really big entry hole, so I may have to do 2 slip knots to hold it. We're going to make it with 1. And then I'm going to go up here, and I've gotten a little bit off in my things. I'm going to trim it a little bit and make a slip knot at the end to give us a loop to go on the tree. And we're going to keep that slip knot as close to the end as we can get it without losing one of our ends. So tighten that up, and we've got our loop to hang it on the tree. So now we're just going to repeat that process over here on this one. There you go. We have 2 Marshmallow Snowman ornaments. Thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you soon.